So it's been about 10 months since I left San Francisco and 5 since I left my corporate tech career. And let me tell you, that distance has been eye-opening. I was out for drinks with some really dear friends the other night, and one of them said something that absolutely stopped me in my tracks. She said, "Kate, I have never used AI, and I don't even know what ChatGPT looks like." I just sat there, absolutely taken aback, and eventually peppering her with follow-up questions because this was mind-boggling to me. Coming from this techie world where I've admittedly been in quite a bubble, AI is currently everything there. From every product launch to every new company that's backed by VC, every LinkedIn post, every party at a conversation. Everything is AI. I've even been to parties where the hosts have to actually try and sequester the conversations around AI to a certain room of the house just to try and keep it from overflowing into the entire party. Yes, I go to some very cool parties, as you can probably tell. But that moment in conversation with my friend Ida made me realize that the version of the future that Silicon Valley is so portraying and hyping up right now, many people don't even want it, and so many people aren't even living in it. And I'm not gonna lie, you guys have often brought this up in the comments to me. I have received many a comment sharing similar experiences and similar feelings on AI, but there was something about that personal moment with one of my dear age-old friends who I've known since high school that has really had me reflecting on the absolute chasm that is forming between the people in San Francisco and Silicon Valley who are building this consumer technology and those on the street, consumers on the street who have to decide how they want to adopt it. I often feel very caught between two worlds here. Let's call a spade a spade. In some ways, I'm very much myself a nerdy tech bro, and we can't forget that. But at the same time, I would like to consider myself a very human-centered and community-centered person who enjoys mulling over philosophy or ethics. These are the type of things that I like to think about on a daily basis. And this realization has had me thinking about some of the core philosophies that drive how this tech is built that often, unfortunately, goes unexamined. Today, I want to dig into two of them: technological determinism and solutionism. These are two ideologies that, in my humble opinion, I think illustrate what many tech bros are getting completely wrong in the current moment. My name is Kate Cassidy, and on this channel, I love digging into themes in tech, media, AI, culture, and society. Whether you're a techno-optimist or a trepidatious consumer, you're hopefully going to find something interesting in this one. So let's start with technological determinism. It's the belief that technology is the main driver of human progress. It's inevitable, unstoppable, and once a new tool, a new technology exists, then human society will actually shape itself around it afterwards. It purports that innovation is this force of nature, but at the same time, it's a very myopic and oversimplistic way of looking at the relationship between tech and behavioral and cultural changes in society. However, even with that narrow lens, it is one that many tech bros subscribe to. You can see it everywhere in their language and conversation. For example, Marc Andreessen, who's the billionaire venture capitalist, he wrote in his Techno-Optimist manifesto that our civilization was built on technology, our civilization is built on technology. Technology is the glory of human ambition and achievement, the spearhead of progress, and the realization of our potential. This sort of stance is squarely deterministic, and he essentially places technology as that main center point of human destiny, the spearhead of progress, as he puts it. And Marc Andreessen gets some flack, but even the good billionaires like Bill Gates is quoted saying that, "I believe innovation is the most powerful force for change in the world." Where this analysis starts to get even more interesting to me is when you consider the fact that due to the sheer amounts of wealth that these tech billionaires and capitalists have been able to amass over time, they have begun playing a heavier and heavier hand in other places and other arenas in life, like government and policy. Some are calling it a technocracy, which I think in some ways is actually a fair characterization. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about the fact that a small handful of nerds in a very small geographical region of California have such sprawling global influence. And these guys all fully subscribed to these very narrow reductionist philosophies that oftentimes is misaligned with what the general public thinks and feels. Now, I do think there is a conversation to be had around the fact that this new world order has been born and sprung up from an era where the people who have been able to amass this type of wealth have had certain skill sets that have really flourished in the past decades. And those skill sets do tend to be overrepresented and highly relevant for people on the autism spectrum, which does have a correlation with misinterpreting interactions, for example, or have unique perspectives and sometimes challenges with social relationships, social connections and situations. It isn't a total surprise that these are people who mainly or can often over-index on these very techno-determinist views, but it has been a massive shift in the type of skill sets that have been able to build up this amount of power, and I think it's something to consider there. But candidly, I am not qualified to eloquently have that conversation. I just think it's an interesting thing to note and something that we could all observe. I'm just going to leave that hanging there. The problem with this technological determinism philosophy is that it totally negates human agency and the more fluid relationship that occurs between us and the tech we build. And there are alternative theories like social constructivism that do claim on the other side of the spectrum, they claim that instead it is social progress that shapes technology and society determines how tech is built. But this is less popular of an opinion among the tech folks and the people who are actually developing the technology that's happening right now. Let me tell you, when I lived in San Francisco, the deterministic mentality is everywhere. People discuss technology as if it's this force of nature, not something that is actually being created by humans and can be influenced by our own values and making value-based decisions on how you want to build. Especially in the world of AI right now, there's this insane marketing and hype cycle that is happening that has perpetuated an extreme sense of urgency in the AI race. It's either it's us or it's going to be some foreign adversary that builds it, and people just buy into this language and this rhetoric so willingly. I kid you not, if you have spent any time in Silicon Valley in the recent years, you have probably met at least one person at some random startup party that truly thinks, truly believes that they are building God. That is not hyperbolic. People truly believe this. The Kool Aid is not just being drunk right now, it is being absolutely mainlined. It's just the reality and the mentality behind what people are building. And I feel like I need to pull back the curtain on that one because I think people don't often know what's actually going on right now in that scene. They forget that technology is not like gravity or other true forces of nature, like natural disasters, things like that. It's built on a series of choices made by the people who are in the room. And those choices are shaped and influenced by and are reflective of the incentives and biases and also the values of the people who are building it. And when these tech bros forget that, they end up mistaking and conflating their own personal ambitions and feelings with what they think is inevitable human destiny and progress and innovation. It's a remarkably egocentric bias that gets baked into how so much of tech is developed, and it's this type of short-term thinking and short-sightedness that leads to things being built like the Cybertruck. Elon Musk felt so strongly that the future needs to look like the future that he built this monstrosity that it seems like no one actually wants if you look at the sales numbers. Or you can look at the example of the Humane AI pen, which was built by this star-studded cast of tech industry leaders and at one point had a valuation of up to around $1 billion. That, of course, was before it was released to the public and the company came crashing down because, surprise, surprise, no one actually wanted the AI voice activated hardware that they would be wearing on themselves at all times of day. But I've talked about that example more in my AI bubble and potential crash video. If you're interested in these more balanced takes on AI, I do have a full playlist on topics in AI literacy, so you can check that out. But the second philosophy that I want to dig into today is solutionism. We need to unravel this one together. Solutionism is essentially where people believe that every single human and social problem can and needs to be solved by technology. Whether it's loneliness, there can be an app for that. Or if the population is experiencing obesity and health issues, then there could be an AI-powered assistant that helps you making healthy choices. Or if there's prevalent educational inequality, then just give every kid an iPad or a computer. We've seen that story play out before. And I say this jokingly, but I myself can totally fall into this line of thinking sometimes. It's funny, I recently had to fill out a little prompt for my camp at Burning Man, a little introduction prompt. And the question that I had to write about was, what do you want the future to look like? What would it look like if tomorrow were today? And immediately what comes to mind for me is things like desalination technology being more widespread and accessible and safe nuclear technology and nuclear power. All these sort of things are like what comes to my brain first. And I know I'm not alone in this in the tech world, but at least perhaps I get some points for self-awareness and conscientiousness. I don't know. I might just be trying to give myself some grace there. However, there's a very important thing that solutionism often forgets to ask, and that is, should this problem be solved by technology? Or are we potentially actually making things worse by avoiding addressing the actual deeper structural issues or the human issues that are at the base of the issue? That's a lot of issues at once. Hopefully you understood what I was saying. This sort of thinking is everywhere in Silicon Valley, and we need to look no further than the seemingly never-ending cycle of humans have problems. Let's build tech to solve these human problems. Oh wait, there were unforeseen circumstances and consequences that came from that quote-unquote solution that caused more problems. Let's solve those new problems that have been now introduced with more technology. And it goes on and on. For example, think about how social media was built to connect humans via the internet and allow for increased communication. But at the same time, it ended up creating a lot of issues with addiction. And now, to curb that addiction and those dopamine trap issues, there are AI wellness assistants or other versions of tech that have been created as new solutions to these problems that were introduced by social media. Or another classic example is dating apps. Oh dear, dating apps have actually, they were supposed to solve the problem of allowing more people to meet each other and get together and find love and romance and build relationships. They've actually eroded human connection in relationships. So now there are AI companions to help with the loneliness that has come and been born from that erosion of human connections and relationships and community. It's just so classic, and we've seen it time and time again. Another example that is from fiction, but I personally love, is the movie Snowpiercer. Can't speak to the show, never seen the show, but love the film that's directed by Bong Joon-ho. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I think it perfectly illustrates the short-sightedness of this mentality. In this dystopian future that's portrayed in the movie, to combat the issues of global warming that was caused by human industry and activity on the planet, the scientists in this future scenario, decide to attempt some climate engineering to actually cool down the planet to a more suitable level by using technology and putting coolant into the sky. And what ends up happening is Earth is then plunged into a new ice age. Of course, this is fiction, but I think it's just such creative storytelling that illustrates the issues that can come from very narrow solutionist thinking. What's dangerous about both technological determinism and solutionism is they create this narrow worldview where complex human systems are reduced down to engineering problems. And one of you put it so well in a comment from 5 months ago that literally sticks in my head to this day. Zuby Zuba astutely observed that move fast and break things just leaves things broken. If you hadn't heard it before, move fast and break things is this common motto in the startup world that's attributed to Mark Zuckerberg in the early days at Facebook. This comment literally haunts me, and I'm just so thankful for the intelligent and curious community that we're building on here, which you should consider joining by subscribing to this channel if you are interested in these sort of topics and like having these sort of conversations. There's nothing that I like more than kicking around these sort of ideas with you guys. So whether you subscribe or not, definitely comment. I want to hear what you're thinking. Many of you aren't subscribed yet, so just something to consider. With all of this, I think it's important that we be informed consumers and remember that technology isn't destiny. It's intentionally designed. But we do have power over our own realities. I often find there to be a very negative tone to much of the commentary on these sort of topics on YouTube specifically. The whole society is doomed and we're all effed rhetoric is just, it's simply abound. But I personally find it remarkably low agency to just throw up your hands and decide that nothing can be done and AI is going to replace us all anyway, so why even bother? What could we even possibly do? It's just, what a sad way of thinking. In my mind, this sort of mentality just means that you've outsourced your sense of self-control to external factors, and you also are probably really buying into very extremist headlines. Let's not forget that news and media benefit from fear, outrage, and negativity. And on the flip side, the tech bros, they benefit from marketing and branding and hype cycles, which keep their tech company valuations sky high. We still get to choose what we build and what we use. And I think that we would all stand to gain from just being more intentional about these things and deciding intentionally what we want to adopt. Like I said, I often feel caught in the middle. On one side, there's the nerdy tech optimist in me who genuinely does love innovation and the pace and the chaos and environment of building and being in the startup world. But at the same time, I also am very community oriented. And I think that often the folks who are building are really losing sight of what human progress and development actually means. And since I'm so embedded in all of this, I would really love to hear your refreshing perspectives in the comments. Thanks so much for watching today. We'll talk again soon. Bye.